Hi, what up YouTube? It's Shininess here, aka Destin T for those of you who know me from GameFAQs. Shout out to the OSG. And this right here is a mini tutorial on how to RNG the roamers in black and white so that they can be controllable for nature's IVs and Shininess if you so desire. Now I highly recommend you have prior experience RNGing in 5th gen, since this is one of the most difficult RNGs to attempt. It helps to know what you're doing beforehand. So to find ourselves a usable seed, we open up Time Finder and we set our method at 5. Standard seed and counter type roaming Pokemon. Input your desired IV spread, and we're going to be looking at PID frames for our natures in the main RNG reporter window, so we don't have to worry about those right now. And synchronizers don't work with the roamers, so don't bother with those. If you're going for shininess, you'll input your info here and set your max shiny frame to 1000, because we're going to want to try to find a frame to hit at around 650 or above, and that's because of the range generated from the roamer. I'll explain more about that later on, including how to manipulate your ID-SID combo. But for right now, set your min-max frame to 1, because it's much easier to keep track of your PID advancements than it is to do those and your IV RNG steps. So hit generate, and when you have yourself a usable seed, you're going to want to copy the full seed, and in the main RNG reporter window, set your method at 5 PID RNG, encounter roaming Pokemon, input your seed and your desired nature, and you're going to want to put your starting frame at around 650 or above, and this is depending on what type of weather you have outside the house on Route 7 when you exit. If you have no weather outside, then you're going to be looking at a range between 550 to 750 for your shifted starting frame. If you have mild rain outside, that's not including the roamers, then you're going to be looking somewhere between 1500 to 1900. And for snow and hail, you're going to be looking in between those two ranges of values. But keep in mind, you can always look outside those range of values in order to determine your own shifted starting frame. That's just what's common for most people. Alright, so find yourself a frame that you want to hit and that's usable, and I'm going to be making this one shiny, so right now it's at 698 under encounter type roaming Pokemon. If I switch over to wild Pokemon, I'll see that it's now 695, and there's generally a difference of around 3 or so between the two encounter types. So make note of those, and open up Pandora's box, input your full seed, and going to want to input the frame that you got from looking at wild Pokemon encounter type. Find ID seeds, and you'll see a wide variety of combos that you can try out. So pick whatever one appeals to you, but you're going to have to make sure that they actually work for your PID frame first. So you're going to want to double check, and this is the combo that I'm going to use, and switch over back to roaming Pokemon, and you'll see that now at frame 698 I get a shiny Timid Thundurus with the IV spread from Time Finder. So this combo does indeed work. So now you're going to want to double check what your target time and key press of your seed that you have to hit. And if you fail to get it the first time, then you input whatever ID you receive here and along with your target time, and whatever frame you land on, you'll subtract that from your target frame, and that'll be the number of times you have to say no to Professor Juniper whenever she asks you about your name. You might have to calibrate for a shifted starting frame, and this generally just requires you to say no to her one time and then continue with your regular PID advancements of saying no to her. And you do get your combo successfully. Speed run through the game until you're at the house on Route 7, and you're going to want to make sure you encounter any season change beforehand. So change the date and encounter the season change before you do it at the house on Route 7, because you don't want that messing up with your consistency of your calibration. And also make sure you have whatever catcher Pokemon or Pokeballs that you need for catching the roamer, and make sure you have your 2 Chatots for your PID advancements. Once you have all those set, save on the very last step of the house before the exit, reset your game at your target time, and gonna want to do a control run of 0 PID advancement. So once you gain control of your character, exit the house and start mashing the A button as soon as possible, because we're gonna want to get through this whole cutscene as consistent as we can. And this picture from Catholics of Smogon shows you how the IVs and PID are generated for the roamer after the rain lets up. So as long as you can keep your consistent A button mashing, the rain will be consistent for you as well, for the most part. So to find out if you hit your target seed, you'll catch the roamer and check its IVs. If they match up, then you hit your seed. If they don't, then your timer 0 was off and you need to try again. But when you do hit your seed with the right IVs, then take note of its nature and characteristic, because in RNG Reporter, you're going to want to open up the list of all the frames again and find the first one that corresponds with the nature that we got. I consistently got a naive nature thunderous that was alert to sounds when I did 0 PID advances, so this one's the first plausible one that could be my shifted starting frame. But first I need to change all the PIDs here into their decimal form. Alright, so now that they're in their decimal form, I need a calculator with modular arithmetic. The one in Windows will do in decimal and keyword. So type in the PID, hit mod 6, and you'll get a result between 0 to 5. It's going to be called your PID %6 mod, and we're going to be using it in order to determine our shifted starting frame. So on a sheet of paper, I'm doing this on a computer, but you can do it on a sheet of paper. Draw a hexagon and label each point a different stat in the order shown clockwise, starting from HP and going to attack, defense, speed, special attack, and special defense. Each one of these stats correspond to a different PID %6 mod. In this case, HP is 0, attack is 1, defense is 2, speed is 3, special attack is 4, and special defense is 5. Now you're going to want to mark each stat that is tied with your maximum value for your IVs. So let's say you have more than one stat that has a value of 31. In my case, I have 31 IV in HP, speed, special attack, and special defense. So using a different color or different icon, mark the stat that corresponds to the result that you got from your previous calculation. In this case, I got 5 as my result. This is going to be your starting point, and what you're going to want to do is advance clockwise until you reach a stat that is tied with your maximum. So in other words, reach one that is marked. In this case, I already start out from one of my stats that is tied with my maximum, special defense. So wherever you land up, that would be your characteristic of the Pokemon that you just caught. Let's say that I didn't start from here and I started from here. That meant that I would have to advance clockwise until I reach here, a stat that's tied with my maximum. But in my case, I start out here and I end out here, and so my characteristic should have been somewhat vain if I had hit this frame. But since the characteristic that I just got was alert to sounds, this means that the PID frame that I just tested is not a plausible shifted starting frame. So you're going to have to try the next possible ones and keep on doing that until you can determine a range of values for your shifted starting frame. And then you're going to want to do increments of 10 advances from each one, because If you just do 1 or 3 or 5, it's not going to make that much difference, because since the ring advances at a rate of 60 frames per second, the PID frame, some frames are going to be skipped and you might not be able to hit certain frames. So you're going to want to have a pretty big gap between the advances in order to compensate for the ring advancements. So as you can see, I triple checked my starting frame whenever I got 0 advances. I kept on getting a naive alert to sound thunderous, so my consistent mashing went well with the consistency of the ring. So hopefully that works out for you as well. And you can see here I got different PID frames for my shifted starting frame, and I started to narrow them down once I saw a pattern. But I actually had to look outside the range that I stated earlier. So if you don't find a pattern when looking at the stated ranges that I told you about before, then you can always extend your search in order to look for more frames to test out. So I kept on doing advances of 10 and trying to establish a pattern, even though they don't quite match up with the number of advances. They're still somewhat in an orderly fashion in the list of PID frames in RNG Reporter, that they seemed plausible enough. And as you can see here, I got one anomaly or inconsistency when I did 70 advances, and I got a possible PID frame of 581 that doesn't match up with either of the previous advances. So I just ignored that and continued on, because I had a pretty good pattern going on, and I even got the pattern to continue with 80 advances and 100 advances. So if you have inconsistency such as the one I got here, just ignore it and keep on trying. It was so much of an inconsistency that I double checked and tried to do 68 advances, and I still landed up on the same frame as before. So that's why I said do at least advances of 10 or more. So when you do get yourself a good pattern and you can establish a range of values from which to start doing advances to hit your target frame, do so. And I went somewhere between 446 to 457 for my shifted starting frame. So I started out with 247 and then just kept on varying the amount of advances, and eventually 242 netted me my shiny PID frame. So keep at it, and hopefully you can get somewhat of a consistency in a pattern. And yeah, don't give up. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope these tips and tricks helped you out. I'm gonna be including a more in-depth explanation of the whole process in the description of this video, so stay tuned and peace.